Let's go to God. Father, thank you so much. Thank you for the many, many blessings. Thank you for safety from storms. Father, I pray for those that are working on our streets right now. Give them safety. Father, I pray for those that will be having tests and surgeries and healing done this next week. Guide and direct the doctors and the nurses and give them the right medicine. And we ask all this be in your will. But Father, I pray for those that are lost. I pray that they will have someone come in their path and tell them how much they love you and how much you've done for them and how we have been cherished orphans that were adopted by you. And you have taken each and every one of us and you've loved us and you've guided us in oh so many ways. Father, I ask for continued love and care. And today especially when you breathed the Spirit into the church. We ask all this in Jesus Christ's name. Amen.
Amen.
Well, we're going to be, like I said, on page 98 in our book. I have on Matthew 26, 31 through 35. It says, "Tonight all of you will desert me," Jesus told them, "for the scripture says, God will strike the shepherd, and the shepherd of the flock will be scattered. And the sheep of the flock will be scattered. But after I have been raised from the dead, I will go ahead of you to Galilee and meet you there." And Peter declared, "Even if everyone else deserts you, I never will." Do you see how Peter just kind of glossed over the fact that Jesus said, "After I've been raised from the dead"? You see where he just kind of glossed over that? And Peter, Jesus said, "The truth is, this very night before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times. "No," Peter insisted. "Not even if I have to die with you, I will never deny you." And all the other disciples vowed the same. And that's where we left off last week. And I was wondering, has there ever been an hour, a minute, a day this past week where you might have denied Christ?
Oh, you just digging deep, aren't you?
Deadly.
You know, deny him by not doing something, not saying something. You know, Peter isn't the only one, is the way we're going to leave it. And then they walked into the Olive Garden and for a time of prayer. When was the time you deserted someone who needed your help? Had that time? Nobody wants to look at me. Or, when was the time you missed an opportunity to serve Christ? 3 very hard questions. Very hard. In our video last week, we saw some of these places, and I have previewed the next one. I love these videos because I feel like I'm actually walking there with him as he's telling us this story. And remember that he has 11 other guys besides Peter. Judas has already made his plan. We've got to remember, so 10 other guys. And Judas had already sold Jesus for the 30 pieces of silver, and he planned to betray him that very evening, where they had usually gone to pray. Now, it was Peter, the rock, who spoke up first, and he said, "Even though these others abandoned you, I'm not going to." Usually, you want strength in numbers. Hey guys, He said we're going to abandon him. Come on. Come on. He didn't say that. He said, no, even though these others are going to abandon you, I'm not going to. Peter had a very self-centered attitude. Very. When it came down to the moment that Jesus was arrested, he was overcome by fear. Peter was. Well, it would be scary in the night. In the nighttime, if I can't see real well, I don't step very well, and I don't run very well, and I sure don't want to reach out because it's night. He was not his bold, courageous self. He was fearful and flawed. That's us. We have seen this time too. We have those flaws. And when Jesus told him, I tell you, this very night before the cock crows, 3 times, you will deny me. And they were very painful words to Peter, because they came back to haunt him. They've been painful words to me when I fail. Whoa, how could I do that again? I said I wouldn't do it. How could I do it again? He repeated his promise of loyalty. Even though I must die with you, I will not deny you. And it says that he, in the garden with the others, when the crowd came, Peter, seeing this crowd of lit candles coming toward them, I'm sure that there was fear and a flaw that he had, big mouth, and he thought, boy, this is Peter's character in action. Think about it. After finishing their Passover meal, they walked to the garden, and they had read Psalms 118, and I read it last week. It's a very long psalm, and it talks about loving the Lord and praying to Him. And it's probably a prayer that they had said many times. They went to a state of praying. Now, I hope that when we walk into our sanctuary, we're in a state of prayer. We're going to go in there and pray. We're going to praise, and we're going to listen. It's different than walking into a football stadium. It's different than going into a restaurant. It's different than going into Walmart. It's a different state of mind. They knew this was the time of prayer because they had done it night after night after night after night. They knew where they were going. The disciples knew when they got past that entrance that he would probably take the 3 with him because he'd done it over and over. Come on, Peter, James, John, let's go. So the others would just automatically sit down on the nearest rock, path, whatever. And I look in our book and I see this garden. Look at your picture on page 99. And I think, okay, they found a comfortable place, a tree to lean on, a comfortable piece of grass to sit on. And right now our grass would be green, so it might not be too bad. It might be a little wet, but... and they went, this was the time they knew he wanted them to pray. Pray for me when I go in here. Pray for these other 3 guys, Peter, James, and John. And pray for yourselves. So he took the 3 and he went a little bit further. And he told them, you 3 stay here and please pray for me. Please, pray for me. Like what we just did this morning. Give me a name and please pray for them. And I'll pray for them through the week. Their state of mind was in a thoughtful time. Jesus' state of mind was in agony. He was sweating blood. He was probably very shaky, very nervous. It was kind of like if the doctor told you you had cancer, you're going to go in, we're going to have surgery right now. It's going to be in the next 30 minutes. It's going to be about 2 hours long. Your family can wait right here. Think about that. And then he went a little bit further. He got down on his knees. I don't know if he prayed silently. I don't know if he cried out to the Lord. I don't know. But whatever he did, it tells us in the Word that he had sweat drops of blood, and he asked God, my Father, if it's possible, take this cup of suffering away from me. However, not what I want, but what you want. That's in Matthew 26:39. Now, Jesus got up after he agonized for a little bit. He got up and he went back and he said he wanted to see if the three guys were still praying for him. He went back and they were snoring away. Huh. And he said, could you stay alert 1 hour with me and pray so that you won't give in to temptation?
Have you tried to pray for an hour solid?
It's hard.
It's very difficult.
It's hard.
Even for 5 minutes, it's hard. I need to just to stay on that. It's hard.
My sister's church has adoration, and they go weekly.
Yes.
Every minute, as many in the church that want to participate. But like you say, I asked Dixie, I said, what?
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Andy's, they had
But
like
they do.
24-hour prayer
Yeah.
vigils. People would get up in the middle of the night and do the prayers, you know.
Yeah.
We've done
We did
that.
at church.
We've done that.
Yeah.
So you won't give in to temptation. We had a class in the TV studio at one time, and it was my prayer warriors that taught me how to pray in this church. And I went in there. I knew that the first 10 minutes was prayer time. So guess what time I went in?
10 after.
10 after.
Her students would just have to go.
And I said, you guys, me. Think about me. I said, I can pray driving my car to get here. I can pray all the way. And I've been praying. But to sit here in a silent prayer like you guys, and it was silent, like you guys do, that bothers me. So I would be the first group of disciples at the gate. Okay? I'm just telling you. Because to be taken deeper in, like Peter, James, and John, I want you to pray for me 1 hour. And they came back and they were snoring. Well, then he walked away. And he prayed again in agony to the Lord. And he came back. They're snoring. Now come on. I know that all of you in here have this. Have this. An hour of prayer. And I don't think we have to be on our knees. I can pray pacing.
But does your mind not drift?
Yeah. If
I
I
start seeing the laundry or something that has to be done.
Yeah.
I'll be in there, really, and then all of a sudden it's off somewhere else.
Pray without ceasing, it says in the Bible. Without ceasing. You can pray pacing. You can pray folding those clothes. You can pray doing those dishes. You can pray mowing the yard.
What about praying and falling asleep?
Well, that's what they did.
I prayed and I fall asleep.
That's what they did. They fell asleep. He wanted them to pray where they wouldn't be tempted to get their mind. Well, obviously, And Judas, we all know, he was with the gang. He was coming to bring the gang to arrest him. Judas sure wasn't praying. He'd already sold him out. I want you to place
We
yourself.
don't know that. He may have been praying, God forgive me, but I'm doing this anyway.
He didn't like the way things were going. He just didn't like it. Is that us too? I mean, place ourselves in these different spots with these guys. Are we trying to tell people how to do stuff? It has to be our way or no way, you know? It says this happened 2 more times, and each time Jesus had to wake the disciples. These are the people closest to him. I relate to this part of the story in the Bible. I relate to it. Because he talks about this, he's fallen asleep in the church. Where did I read this? A little boy, a preacher's son, was sitting in the balcony with a straw and some spitwads. And he was he was blowing them on the people. He said, "That's all right, Dad. Keep preaching. I'll wake them up."
One way of getting it.
And he did.
And it says here that he says he often works late at night, and he was up around 1 a.m. one night working on a sermon, sitting at his computer,
Like this.
and then he woke himself up and he had 5 pages of the same letter. You know, have you done that?
Yes.
After the 3rd time Jesus woke his disciples, he saw the torches coming. He saw them coming. They were carried by armed members of the temple guard. There was a crowd that followed with swords and clubs. Now we all know, if you're like me, if I see a group of people in a parking lot somewhere, I think, oh, there's trouble. I don't think good. I think there's trouble. I just did it the other day. There was a bunch of people up at the Best Western. I thought, what in the world are they doing at the Best Western? They were getting donuts. You know? If you see a group of people, you think, there's trouble. And the crowd was following the swords and clubs, and Judas walked straight up to Jesus. Straight up to him. And gave him a kiss on the cheek. That was the signal to the guys. And Peter sprang into action, it says, grabbing a sword. Now this is not in all the Gospels, this part of the story. He grabbed a sword, he struck one of the men who had come to arrest Jesus, a servant of the high priest, and he cut off a piece of the man's right ear. Peter was the only one of the 12 that stood to fight the crowd. I think the crowd swallowed up the others, and I think they started backing away. Even the sons of thunder, James and John. He had an act of courage, however, Jesus did not want that type of confrontation. He turned to Simon Peter, put the sword away. Put the sword away. All those who use the sword will die by the sword. Or do you think that I'm not able to ask my Father, and he will send more than 12 battle groups of angels right away? Now think about that. Boy, that would have been a miracle. Hello. But that wouldn't have helped us. If he had called his angels down, it wouldn't have helped you and I. And we are here today because he didn't call the 12 battle group of angels. We are here today. That church over there is here today. The church down the street's here today. The ones down the street are here today. Because Jesus did not call the 12 battle groups of angels. Thank you, God. Thank you. Thank you for not calling them. Boy, we're getting some messages, aren't we? It says, Luke tells us that Jesus picked up the severed ear, put it back in place, and healed the man.
That's amazing.
Now there's a miracle. Wow. If you are looking for me, then let these people go. Jesus took up for his men right there. If you're looking for me, let these other people go. And that's what he does for us. If you're looking for me, let these others go. Because they had already deserted Jesus. They had already backed away.
Just like he predicted that they would.
Just a few hours. He had told them, I'll die with you, Jesus. I will die with you. He's standing there with that sword that Jesus took from him. No, this isn't what you're going to do. It says at the bottom of page 100, from the Church of St. Peter and Gallicantu, the Garden of Gethsemane and the Mount of Olives can be seen to the east, and to the north is the Temple Mount. To the south is Hinnom Valley. And if you look at our map that's in our book, you can see that Judas was filled with remorse at this time. I think he probably began to cry. Because he, in his heart, after this scene with Peter and the ear and the kiss and the crowd, and Jesus said, let them go. Let them go. And there was an ancient stairway. Ooh, isn't this an interesting Sunday? And Jesus was led up that staircase. Of course, we all know that now some of it is roped off, but there are 2 or 3 steps still left where you can step on them. And beneath the church's ancient cisterns, thought to have been used as a prison for Jesus, where you can look down in, and in the video you can see. They think probably Peter was standing in the background and he could hear what was going on to Jesus. And he was listening. And Mary was finding it very hard to get close to. Now, they haven't mentioned her up until right now. I find it interesting that Mary was there, and they all knew Mary. They knew she was a faith believer. They knew she was there. They left her alone. It was late at night, and Jesus was taken by the guards across the Kidron Valley and up to the high priest's house, and the Jewish ruling council, the Sanhedrin, were all gathered there. Isn't that funny? They all had a meeting late at night. And they were all there. Oh, I can't come. I've got a ball practice over here. Oh, yes, you can. You can come to this meeting. You can be here. They were all there. And the other disciples were probably in the background. Upon arriving at the house, they found a small crowd gathered in the courtyard, and it was cold, it was cool. They were standing there warming their hands by the fire. And Peter and John took the risk of going up to the fire, warming their hands. People started recognizing them. Weren't you with him? No, 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 no. Yeah, I think I recognize you. You were with him. I recognize you being there. No, no, I wasn't there. Peter remembered his denial. 3 times he denied. And I think Peter was hearing things that was being done to Jesus. Jesus was on trial in the home, and Peter was about to stand trial if he got in there. And the firelight, the servant woman, walked up to him and said, "You were also with Jesus the Galilean," but he denied it in front of all of the people. I don't think he was quiet either. "No, I wasn't there." It made him mad. It made him mad. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said. Matthew continues, "When he went over to the gate, another woman saw him and those there, and this man was with Jesus the Nazareth. I don't know the man." Luke tells us another hour passed, and John notes that Peter was warming himself when a man approached him. John tells us that it was a relative of the man whose ear Peter had chopped off. He was asking whether it was Peter who was in the garden with Jesus. And here's what it says in Matthew 26. He began to curse, and he swore an oath, "I do not know the man." At that moment, the cock crowed. And then Peter remembered that what Jesus had said. "Before the cock crows, you will deny me 3 times. And he went out and wept bitterly. Whoa. Whoa. Peter demonstrated a courage and faithfulness to Jesus that none of the other disciples had when he grabbed the sword. All the way to the courtyard, he followed him. He stuck by him. He followed him to the courtyard. We don't know where the others were. "Even though I must die with you," he said, "I will not deny you." But imagine now Peter fleeing in the darkness, weeping uncontrollably. Have you cried like that? Woo! I have many times.
Takes the strength out of you.
Whoa. Yeah. It zaps your energy. It takes it out of you. It's a cleansing that not only is hurtful, it's like it just takes the bottom of your gut and just throws it out there. It hurts. And that's what Peter did. And Judas is already reckoning with himself. You know, where were those others? Did they run back to the house and slam the door and stand there? He's gone. He's gone. We don't have our strength anymore. We don't have him. Mary's still there. Peter was there till he realized, boy, man, I messed up. I really messed up. It says that the Gospels were all written after Peter's death. We'll learn in the final chapter, Peter died courageously, having spent the last 35 years of his life boldly proclaiming Christ. Boldly. And why then, when the various gospel writers were recording any part of the story, why did they tell about this part of Peter's failing? Why did they tell about it? Why did we need to hear that story about Peter failing Christ?
Because we fail.
I need to know that these people in the Bible are just like me. I need to know that. Typically, following the death of a revered figure, their shortcomings and failures are minimized, while the positive attributes and saintly stories of anyone comes out. Why would a church that loves Peter retell a story about Peter's failure?
They wanted to be true to what happened.
True. I think in order to convince a person that does not believe, you have to say, you know, all of these people in this Bible have failed at one time or another. They're just like you. They have rebelled against their parents. They have not done well on the job. They have not succeeded in everything they've done. And the story of Peter tells me over and over again that his faith grew through everything in his life. His faith grew. He got stronger and stronger so that at the end of his life, he could die a victory in Jesus. But he had to go through this other stuff. When I think of Peter and the gospel writers, what they wanted us to see in this story, we're all like Peter. Peter denied Jesus by our thoughts, words, and deeds, both in what we've done and what we should have done, how we've lived, and at times is inconsistent with our faith. We've mistreated others. We've joined in the taunting and teasing and gossip and hurt others. We've given into materialism or idolatry or lust. For all of us, there have been moments when our witness, for example, was needed, but we remained silent and did nothing.
Amen.
That's a powerful paragraph. Wow. Well, Adam Hamilton, why did you put that in there? Now I feel guilty. Because we need to be called back to task.
That's why you put it in there.
We need to be called back. Come on, sheep. Get back in the pen. Come on, sheep. You've wandered away. Get back in here. It says Paul Plummer was working in an IGA grocery store in St. Joseph, Missouri, when a crowd of as many as 7,000 of his friends and neighbors and a host of others gathered around the town's jailhouse. Now, this is a sad story. And they had come for Lloyd Warner, a 19-year-old black man accused of raping a 27-year-old white woman. This sounds like today, folks. While interrogated, he confessed, but later he recanted that confession. The young woman was certain that it was Warner. And more certain that she was, the more certain the crowd was. Plummer rushed out and stood at the edge of the crowd watching to see what would happen, and after law enforcement attempted to prevent Warner's abduction, the ringleaders took Warner, dragged him out of the courthouse, beat severely, and hung him. And then they drenched his body with gasoline, and then they lit him on fire.
How could people be so cruel?
As he writes these words, he's looking at a photograph of the white man, proudly standing, staring at this young man's body. Proudly. That experience would change a life. Woo! It hurts me just to read that. Doesn't it hurt you? I can't believe people can act this way. But we have, year after year, war after war, time after time. We're cruel. People are cruel. Would you have spoken up? These are his friends and neighbors and his customers. Would you have spoken up?
I don't think we could say we would or we would not unless we had been there.
That's right.
Right. As a faith believer,
We would today, but back in those times, we might not.
You'd be afraid. Afraid
We
to
wouldn't
speak
have
up.
come there.
anytime there's a crowd like that,
That's
a mob
We wouldn't have been there.
mentality, I exit. I'm not going to stand around and be in that mob mentality. Not going to do it.
I hear the news daily, you know, and I've often said to Ron, how can people be so cruel to a fellow human being? Just how can they do that? No matter how bad they were or they did, still, we need to be humane. And we're not.
And Peter is in a crowd, remember. It says, last paragraph, page 105. Peter's story shows us that we need not be defined by our failure. God does not define us by the worst thing we ever did. Jesus makes amazing use of flawed disciples. He continually invites us back, forgives us, and restores us. Sometimes he uses us even more profoundly, not merely in spite of our flaw and failure, but because of them. I believe in second chances. He's given me second chances. I believe in him. And Simon Peter wasn't afraid to talk about his shortcomings so that others could learn and grow and find grace. He knew that every person who commits to follow Jesus will fall short. He says on many occasions he's been in his office with people who were sobbing, done something that they thought was horrible. And he's reminded them that Jesus wept too. Jesus wept. He cried. He felt pain. He felt anguish. He felt sorrow and shame, and because Jesus really didn't want to go through what he did, but he said, but God, if you want me to, all right. There are many stories in our congregation. Many. Many stories in our congregation. We haven't heard them all. Some people don't like to share anything, but they've been through so many things. He has a friend, George Acevedo, who pastors United Methodist Church in Florida. His church's addiction ministries. Did you read that? Many people have struggled with alcoholism. Folks, we're going to have some problems. In every other block, we've got marijuana. We're going to have some problems. And during the invitation after the Lord's Supper, he said, so if you struggle with alcohol like I do, this is the preacher, like I do, please know that this is a safe place for you. And he was overcome with how many people came forward. What I didn't even realize was that I was outing myself as a person who is in recovery. Some people were shocked, but a funny thing happened. Everyone in the church that day who was an alcoholic, who had struggled with some kind of addiction, any addiction, found that their friends who struggled with the same issue had told them. They went out and got their friends. You need to come to our church. Our preacher is even a person fighting this. You need to come to our church. The church's 12-step program started 5 different campuses. Their ministry is one of the largest recovery programs in the country. And it started because a preacher told his story. Our prayer at the end today says, Lord, let me be your servant by serving others. As my guide, let me remember the way you humbly washed your disciples' feet. Grant me the faith and the courage, in spite of my failings and my denial, to follow you wherever you call me to go. Amen.